July 6th. Has everybody read the minutes for July 6th? Any issues? So do I hear a motion? You're on mute.
I move they be adopted.
Thank you, Peter. All those in favor, say, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
It seems
Aye,
like
Melissa Herman.
Aye.
it's unanimous. Okay, and now for the minutes of September 20th. Has everybody read those minutes, and are there any suggestions for changes? Hearing none, I'll proceed to asking whether there's a motion. If somebody is prepared to propose a motion.
So move.
Thank you, Woody. Seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you, Peter. All those in favor? It's probably easier just for me to go through and say by name. Woody?
Yes. Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Jerry?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye. And I need to step away to get my glasses. I'll be back.
Okay. And Janet?
Aye.
Passed unanimously.
And
Okay.
Melissa there too.
What was that?
There's also Melissa on the phone.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Melissa. I'm not
That's
having
all
to
right.
keep you, I just passed you by. I apologize.
That's all right. I will say aye, Melissa Herman, since I'm off camera at the moment.
Thank you, Melissa. Now I would like to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a discussion of the Warrant Committee's activities and responsibilities. I'm wondering if anybody's given any thought to the way we can improve the performance of the Warrant Committee, and I think I'm certainly thinking about this as a process and not something we necessarily have to start doing immediately. I think over the course of the next few months, if we can collect together some clearly defined processes, it would help us, and particularly it would help new members to understand more what the committee is all about. So has anybody got any suggestions? A resounding silence? Hopefully not. Janet.
So and I should know by now since I've been on this for the last few years, but we get the list of departments, but I don't always know who to connect with.
Yep.
So if there's a way for us to get introduced to the people who are covering its department and contact information somehow, I think that would be very, very helpful.
Yeah, I agree with that heartily, Janet. In fact, I've asked Felicia a few weeks back if she could give me a list of everybody who, all the committee, board and commission chairs, and she is trying to assemble that and has promised to get it to me just as soon as she possibly can. The challenge is at the beginning of the year, there's a lot of flux in chairs and committees, and not everybody has reported into her yet. It is likely to take us a little bit of time. But I would suggest that if you're uncertain about who your contact might be, if you would reach out directly to Felicia and ask her to head you in the right direction, even if it's only to the last chair. I have started to pull together a list, but it's by no means complete. But I'd be quite happy to distribute what I've got to everybody. Yeah. Any other suggestions? One of the things I've been thinking about is the whole question of onboarding of members. I think we've all, when we've joined, have felt a little bit out of our depth. We haven't really had a good idea of what our responsibilities are, and it's really been sink or swim for most of us. And over a period of time, we have learnt the process that is followed in the breach, as it were, and get comfortable with that. But I think people can be much more productive if we try and help them get up to speed much more quickly. I was hoping we could get perhaps a more recent member to document a process, what they would consider ideal, and what they particularly missed out on. As a more recent member, you may well be in a position to make that judgment call better than the rest of us, since the pain has faded for the older hands on the committee. So I don't know exactly how we should do that. Not having Marty Howard here makes that a little bit more challenging, but I was thinking perhaps Jerry or Marty might want to take that burden on, but I just was wondering what everybody else thought of that idea. I think one of the other comments I've heard is that, well, the town needs a better onboarding process in general, and I suspect that that might be starting to happen with Michael on board, and we might be able to push that forward via Michael, and once we've identified the processes that the town is starting to follow in onboarding new staff, we might be able to become part of that and document the Warrant Committee's section of it a little bit more thoroughly. That might be a better way to do it. I haven't really strong feelings about that, but I do feel that we leave our new members a little bit to themselves at the beginning. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Jerry.
I tend to agree that if there's a written document, like listing out the responsibility, like as a liaison with certain committees, like the step 1, step 2, like give the general guideline. Yes, to avoid, for me, is my tendency is try to avoid being overboard when you're in contact with. So I want to see whether, I guess, for example, like after a couple emails reaching out to for example, certain committee chairs, if no response, any suggested next step, or it's just the way it is, like something like that, definitely. Yeah, for the coming months, definitely I can see a big benefit for myself.
Yeah, and that probably leads on to the other sort of process that I think we do need to define a little bit more clearly, is the responsibility of the role of liaison from the Warrant Committee to the various departments. My thoughts on that are that we should, that as a liaison, we should establish a connection with the department head or chair, get to understand what they perceive to be the big issues that they're faced with in this coming year, particularly if they have financial consequence, or if, for example, the planning board, trying to understand what warrants might be coming forward from the planning board would be really useful for us, so we can start establishing a context for the flow of work for the year. So that's one thing I think is really important, is that establishing that connection. The other one I think is to attend meetings wherever possible, and particularly those that have a financial or warrant article impact. I think that means trying to attend as many meetings as possible of the relevant board or committee, and also to act as a clear communications agent back to the Warrant Committee about what issues might be happening in those boards and committees that would have financial implications that we may need to pay attention to. Of course, there are some meetings where I think Melissa gave me an example of the school committee, where a lot of those meetings are in the details of curricula or planning for whatever sort of subjects or issues that are really internal to the school that don't really impact us. I think that in those circumstances, it would be reasonable to talk to the chair and just ascertain that no issue is going to come up that is relevant to the Warrant Committee, and perhaps not necessarily attending those meetings. But that's a judgment call, and I'm sure you're all quite capable of making that judgment call. Melissa, did you have anything to add there?
Yes, like I think one thing, and this has taken a few kind of seasons of this to get a sense of, that would be helpful to understand, I think, for newer people and even now, is just how does this calendar work? Like, how does the budget come together throughout the year? And like, what are the dependencies along the way? And so I think, like, as we start to know, like, for example, using schools as an example, the schools need to give some sort of preliminary information to the town that then makes assumptions early on that go into the December roll up that the town has. But usually those end up being pretty far off from where we land when they're then doing their approval at the school board level and their presentation to us, because negotiations still need to happen sometimes. Contracts haven't come in, whether it's school buses, labor, projects, capital quotes. And so I think, like, knowing, like, there's that touch point with the towns that happens November, December. There's preparing for like the February cycle where they present to themselves and get their own approval. And then there's the early March when they come in and present to us. I think understanding that could also give us a better sense of, like, these are the windows of time that I should probably either be checking in or engaging a little bit more, if they're not doing it proactively. Because you're absolutely right. Like, there's a window in between, like back to school, not really about budget. And then like January ends up being very different topics. And then February, you're picking up again.
Right.
But it took me some time to figure out, like, the 1 or 2 meetings before they vote on the budget are the really big ones to be there. So that, I think we could probably, that's using the schools as an example, but like the overall cycle, spending a little bit of time on like how it comes together, and then how for our different areas, how they prepare for each of those deadlines.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Melissa. I wonder how we can sort of document that. It probably would be quite extensive piece of documentation. Is that something you would be interested in? And it's not in a hurry. I'm not trying to force a timeline on it. I think as long as we are working on it and trying to improve, I think that's all we can hope for. We've all got full-time, most of us have full-time jobs, and are quite busy with other things. So I think that this sort of work is valuable, but not necessarily something that has to be done tomorrow.
Yeah,
so
I mean, I know you
interested?
had started kind of what that overall timeline looks like the town level one, and kind of where we need to be and when, and this is the blue book deadlines and all of that kind of come together. So I think what I'm thinking, not maybe being involved in like that overarching one, but like for the areas that I know a little bit more about that I've supported, like maybe I can give some of my thoughts on their timelines.
Right.
Like I know Steve's
And then
been
the
with the
school committee and
library.
capital budget, both of which would be useful,
Yeah,
right?
capital budget, I think you've got a good handle on that. Like Steve, for example, knows about Parks and Rec and library and what their cycles tend to look like. Others have been on planning. So I think kind of maybe if there's an area we've covered in the past, if we had any thoughts in it, we could start to dump that into a document.
Yeah, I think that'd be really useful. If you would be prepared to coordinate on that, Melissa, I'd really appreciate it.
I can start the functional area one.
Yeah,
Like if
yeah.
it's, and just start like a document on that,
Mhm.
but probably can't own like the entire.
I think in
handbook.
the end, all of us will
Yeah.
need to somehow contribute to that. So I think that would be very useful. Thank you. The final point I had on the liaisons was the importance of reporting back to the committee. I think we've often observed that in the breach and haven't really had many comments coming back from the committees. And I think perhaps going forward, after we start interacting with these various committees, boards, and commissions, that we should perhaps have a standard segment in the agenda that really goes through that, and where we sort of ask input from everybody on what their feedback is. I think that would be very useful. It informs the rest of us and provides important inputs into reviewing the budgets. Any other thoughts on the liaisons?
Second your comment that liaison reports really should be, maybe the last item on the agenda each meeting.
Right. I think, I mean, it'll probably take us a month or so to get into the rhythm of that, but I think that would be very useful.
Yeah, actually, I do have something to report about fire, but we'll take that at the end.
Sarah?
Hi, Cam. If I may, I'd like to circle back to the original thought here regarding defining the roles as committee members. I'd like to ask everyone for just a little bit of patience, as I'm going to circle back to my appointment, in that it was at the height of the pandemic. I had no committee experience and no local governing body experience to date. To say that I lacked the understanding of my role and or the responsibilities and functions of the committee is a gross understatement. That said, as the pandemic continued and we all sort of acclimated to this new way of meeting via Zoom, I continued to feel this overarching theme of my personal ineffective decision-making and thereby lack of asserting action. The absence of feedback from the initial list that I received. Again, it was my first term, so I didn't have a great deal of demanding liaison responsibility. But there were several committees that either were defunct and or had been, I forget what the case was, but they were unresponsive. And I found out maybe like 6 meetings into our season that someone else had the information that person was no longer with that committee, or that committee had been dismantled or whatever. I mention this because as of recent, we have several brand new members, and I think it's important to bring to the forefront here where I don't want anyone else to ever experience that same feeling that I did, where I was so disengaged that it resulted in me feeling disinterested in participating during meetings actively, because I didn't know how to contribute effectively. The absence of the onboarding, the appropriate onboarding, is something that I think needs to be ascertained in writing, in a document. Maybe it's something that's posted to the website where it clearly defines what everyone's roles and the expectations are known. That way, if anyone were to ask, we can mutually support each other. And if someone from the town, a private citizen or a mutual committee member wants to make the same inquiry, it can be asked and answered very easily. Again, just for the purpose of new members maybe seeking to align with what the committee's goals and objectives are, and moreover, our broader mission of this local government, which again, the absence of that process in shepherding you through as a new member can ultimately cause inefficiencies and conflicts. The other piece that I have, and this is much more recent, and I don't want this to sound like a personal rub, but the question of town government emails has come up a lot last season. And there was a couple of instances where I think there was maybe some, maybe not deliberate, but very discreet assignment of certain email attached to dovertown.org to certain members without having considered standing members and or existing members that were maybe using a personal email, which in my case, I am and I continue to do. I think that might be an area that we can bring up at some point and or as you see fit, either with town or the new website contact and or Blanchard or whoever, because government email addresses simply provide stronger intra-committee communications. I think that it facilitates better communication amongst us as committee members. Certainly when a private citizen looks to the website and they're looking to reach out to you, I think that it sends a message, and that message should be one where each one of us has equal value and that we're mutually capable of sharing information, whether we're a first-term member or a 3-year member, and that we are a collective group that can all competently discuss committee-related matters efficiently. I mentioned this as of recent because last year I had the chance to attend my first RSC meeting, and I decided to do it in person. The previous year still had the pandemic provisions in place where we weren't meeting in person that often. And the absence of a certain member from the Sherborne committee lacked just a gross amount of respectful interaction with me, and it was very public. It was repeated on various well, it was just a sort of a publicly defiling moment for me, in that I had to justify my purpose for being there. I had to explain multiple times who I was with, my representation as liaison of the Warrant Committee, and former and then current member names kept being brought up. Well, no, we usually work with so-and-so, and or we've had great comfortability with X ... and who are you again? And it was gross. In short, it just was not a moment that I cared to have to repeat. And again, I think just having the chance to, again, to mention these areas where I think we could have maybe the absence of that privilege disparity as it relates to emails, so that future members then aren't isolated. There's not any future communication gaps and or any transparency concerns, and of course, equitable access for all. So that is what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Sarah. I personally hadn't been thinking of that as a privilege thing. I mean, typically, the problem is that the town has occasionally been open in offering those email addresses to people, and then at other times hasn't been quite so open. And I think
I agree with you, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but they were made open and available, but a certain committee member took that upon themselves to then share that with new members and failed to communicate that across the board to others that might have also been in queue for said email.
Yeah, I think it probably makes sense for us for me to have a chat with Michael Blanchard and just try and hammer out a policy that applies consistently, and that we take it from there. Either everybody has a dover.gov email address or not. I think it just makes sense for the consistency. So I appreciate those comments. On the coordination front, Sarah, while you were talking, I just had the idea that how about if you, Jerry and Marty, would form a sort of subgroup or subcommittee of the Warrant Committee to actually document that process of onboarding, because I think that would help us all, from somebody who has strong feelings about the absence of that onboarding for you when you started, and then others who are just struggling a little bit. I think it would help the others to understand what the process is, and it might be a useful way for us to start helping new members to really get on board quickly. What are your thoughts there?
I can certainly devote some time to being a contributor to a document that might help to round out the descriptions and or the functions of our roles, and maybe run it past you first as a draft. And I would certainly be open to having other more senior members take a look at it and contribute.
Well, you could present it to the committee, and we could all look at it and all sort of try and contribute and improve the document. I think that would be a really good approach. So we might want to table that perhaps until the next meeting when Marty is present as well, so that I'm thinking the three of you as a subcommittee might be really useful to drive that forward.
I think that sounds okay. I'm not going to formally commit 100% until I hear from Marty.
We'll think about it, and we'll discuss it again next week, and we'll see how it goes.
And I won't be making next week's meeting, unfortunately, as I'm traveling out west with my son to look at colleges that he needs to whittle down off of his list before this November 1 deadline for application. So I'm sorry that I will miss our meeting Wednesday.
No problem. We can defer it for another week after that as well. There's no for the next meeting after that. It doesn't really matter that much when we do it. I think we just need to start taking a more consistent approach to bringing people on board to the committee.
Agreed. I'm happy to help.
Great. Thank you.
Pam, could I, this just sort of popped in my head, and I don't know if people have thoughts. Do people think it would be helpful? I often find like the materials for a group that comes in, they often come in kind of last minute. So oftentimes I've kind of only half scanned them before the meeting. And I find that, I know there's that budget spreadsheet that if you can kind of go line by line, but that's, unless you have a lot of time, it's hard to follow. Like requesting that when groups come in, I don't want to create a lot of work for them, but a slide or two that basically summarizes key budget items. Here's this year's, here's last year's, here's the drivers, and here's the big changes. That just sort of big picture summarizes how we should view their budget. I mean, because there's inevitably, the telephone bill and the stuff, or that's kind of immaterial to everything. But I just don't know if that would be helpful, just to help people make sure people comprehend what is in each group. I know like the school committee kind of already does that. They have a presentation that's more than a slide, but for some of the other groups, just a slide or two. I don't know if people would find that helpful. I know I would, because oftentimes I show up to a meeting without a lot of advanced review of what people are going to talk about at the meeting, so I don't have time to think about it.
Yeah, I think last time, like that packet that we get from the town is like over 100 pages, and I think it was like, okay, page 89, there's this and this, and they're all in different formats. So I do like the idea of maybe asking them to just come in with like a high level summary, like what's different this year, kind of summary.
Yeah, and that's something that the liaisons can own, right? To try and I mean, I guess it would be even better if we could come up with a standard format and say, hey, can you have a summary of these 5 key items at the beginning of the report. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Ken. Didn't Chris do that last year? Didn't he put together sort of the drivers and the, for the changes in the budget? I mean, the first thing is just sitting here listening. Is there a time? I mean, do you have the time? I mean, it sounds like people are hard pressed for time, and that's one. 2, you have to attend the meetings to understand what's going on, and you have to do it on a consistent basis. 3, there is a limit to what is significant versus sort of run of the mill stuff, and it doesn't. How do you parse this stuff? And 4, I don't know if Peter was supposed to put together a timeline based on the past, but it does seem like when you're planning something, right? You have the threads and you have milestones, and you got to hit them. I mean, there's no magic here. That's what I keep saying. Add 2.5% to last year's budget and move on.
Yeah, if that's all it is, but often we have variations that we want to drill down on, Bob. I appreciate your comments, but I think we also need to get ourselves comfortably and as quickly and as efficiently to the point of being able to review those budgets. And I think a summary item would be useful in that context.
I think I agree, Cam. I don't disagree. But these budgets have been reviewed. The school budget's approved. I mean, it's reviewed by any number of people.
Yes, but the Warrant Committee has a special obligation because it's making a recommendation to the town meeting, and that's a very different review, Bob. And the other part of it is that we are, have a statutory independence from either the town or from the Board of Selectmen. So we have to find our own path through this.
Again, there's no disagreement. Right? The question is, how can you do this in an effective and efficient way?
Exactly, and I think that's what we're trying to accomplish here. But let's move on. I'd like to also the next point on our agenda was the whole question of a communication strategy, Peter outlined what the working group had suggested, and I think that this probably is another area where it would be useful for somebody to take on a sort of communications coordination role, where, I mean, basically it would mean ensuring when we have major meetings that are recorded and published on the website, that process is followed through, and also to communicate with Ruth Townsend in the newsletter, so we get a sort of updates to the town about what we're working on at the moment. I think in principle it's a good idea. I'm just wondering if anybody is really interested in taking on that role to make that happen. And I appreciate it's extra work, so I don't expect everybody to say yes at once. But is anybody does anybody have an interest in doing that, or is that something you think we shouldn't bother with?
Cam, can you explain just one more time exactly what the duties may entail?
Sorry?
Can you explain what may be required of this person to do on a regular basis?
It's probably just a coordinating communications. Sorry, I'm in the middle of a meeting. Would you? Sorry.
Coordinating.
And basically, Peter outlined the idea at last week's meeting. Maybe you could refresh our memory on that, Peter. what the working group had suggested we do.
I think the idea was to just try and get the word out, to post information prior to our budget reviews so that people who have a particular interest in, I don't know, park and rec or whatever, they heard something that DPW was about to do something or they wanted more information on, that if we could make it clear, easy for people to find out what's going to be covered at the next meeting, and if the meetings are recorded, to after the fact post the recording so that people who did not want to attend at 7 p.m. on a Wednesday night and tune into the Zoom could see it on YouTube and fast forward to the part they want and then drop off. So the responsibility would really be to coordinate with whoever owns the website and whoever owns whatever social media the town has. I'm told we have a Facebook page. I spent 15 minutes looking for it and I couldn't find it. So that's not useful. But somebody must own the posting rights to that. And if somebody from our committee could see that, announcements are posted and then after the fact that recordings get, linked to, our agendas and minutes on the meetings page. That would be all it would take. I could see it taking on the order of 15 minutes before each meeting and 15 minutes after each meeting to accomplish that. Once we find out who the people are, who's got the keys, and how they want the stuff wrapped for them.
Right, and I think the other thing it might include is an occasional sort of report on the Warrant Committee activities that might be posted to the newsletter that Ruth Townsend publishes.
So Peter said, Peter, you mentioned you didn't find Facebook after looking for it, but I have no idea what this newsletter is that you're talking about. I know the Facebook for Dover, but
So there's a newsletter is published on a semi-regular basis via the town website. You can subscribe to it via the town website, and you can receive news about what's going on in the town. So it's really usually on the front page of the website, I think.
I mean, I definitely know that Facebook does get very good response whenever somebody posts something, so that is probably a good place for it. I can give it a try. I think Janet Greenwood edits the Facebook, or she's one of the admins, so I can talk to her about it.
And if you could share the link to the Facebook site to the committee, it would be good too, Janet, so we can all and have
okay.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that if you would take that on, and clearly we'll help you in any way we can to make that happen. And in fact, probably Woody will need to show you or help get access to the recordings that are made on the Zoom for publishing. But that leads me on to another question about what meetings should be recorded and what the protocol for that might be. Peter suggested that maybe it would be a good idea for us to record the town review meetings. So when we've asked for a committee or a commission or a board to come in and present their budget, that we record all of those meetings. So all of the meetings that are scheduled in that guidance document we looked at last week and that we will look at a little bit later in this meeting would be recorded, but not necessarily the sort of internal hang out the washing sort of meetings like tonight, where we're really trying to work out how we can improve things. Clearly these are public meetings, but I'm not sure they're of great interest to the mass of people. We're just working to make things happen in a more efficient manner. Is that something that people are comfortable with, or is there a feeling that we should be recording every meeting, or that we shouldn't be recording meetings? I'd be interested in getting feedback on that.
Is public invited to every meeting?
Yes.
Okay, if that's the case, then people probably expect the recording to be done every time.
Yeah, it might be the way to bore people. And they'll look at one of these meetings and say, this is not a meeting I want to ever look at again. Whereas I'm thinking more the public the meetings where we're actually interacting with boards and departments and commissions and committees are much more relevant because that's where we're sort of getting the inputs for our review of the budget. That was why I sort of like Peter's idea of maybe having two tiers of meetings, those that are recorded and those that aren't. But I don't feel strongly about it. Does anybody else have any strong feelings about it?
I agree with that one too. If it's just an internal meeting and people are coming in to talk to us, I think that's fine. But if it's or we actually have the department chair coming in to talk about the specific issue, let's just record those. So anytime there's a link out there, it's actually useful and more full of information for the general public other than just the members.
Yeah. I don't know, what do other people feel about that? Steve, you got any feelings about it?
Who did you ask?
Do you have any strong feelings about it?
No, I don't care if we record the meetings. I tend to agree with you that nobody really cares, but I'm happy to record them.
Yeah. Well, would it be just easier for us to record every meeting and just leave it at that, so we don't have to make those decisions? I think that's also a reasonable proposition. Peter was a little concerned that we might be more reticent if we thought we were being recorded than we would be when we're being recorded. I don't feel strongly about it, but what's the consensus?
Cam, I have a thought. I know sometimes our meetings are comprised of approving minutes, general business, and a conclusion. And I'm just wondering if the idea to record or not to record might have that instance fall into the category where a committee meeting where it's a less formal one is not recording, but our general meetings where we're required to post notices in advance and make attendees.
All meetings have to be posted in advance.
Right, right. But I guess I'm referring to more to the content of the meetings, and I was just using the description of committee versus general meeting, and to try and distinguish between what should or shouldn't be. But I don't have a personal feeling either way. I was just trying to add some.
Well, how about we just record them all and just leave it at that if people don't feel too uncomfortable about that. I mean, they're public meetings anyway, and the residents have a right to understand what we're talking about at these meetings. I don't think we intend it to be sort of a private little back of the room conversations. And because all meetings are posted anyway, I think it might make sense just for us to record everything then. Any objections to that? Do we need a motion or something like that, Peter, or is it just a process thing? Okay, let's move on. I did not hear any comments back from people about the proposed liaisons that we came up with. If everybody's comfortable with that, should we just say that those are the assignments that stand? Sarah?
I thought we were discussing that tonight, so forgive me if I missed the part where I was supposed to email you. Sorry to bring up my personal committee liaison grievances here, but
you don't need to make any public grievances. If you aren't comfortable with being on a particular committee, then we can move. We can try and reorder that, Sarah.
I'm not uncomfortable. It's just currently Parks and Rec is a Tuesday with us being on a Wednesday and RSC being on a Thursday. That stacks me 3 nights in a row with that Tuesday meeting starting at 6:30 when I am shuffling twins from soccer in Laurel. And again, not trying to shirk my responsibility. Maybe I'll just send you an email offline and make a suggestion as to what I'm proposing for the season for myself, if that's okay.
Yeah, that would be fine. We need to juggle it with other people. So if you're not going to do Parks and Rec, we have to find somebody else to do that. So it really, we need to agree on that. We will be reviewing the budget guidance which has all of the list of liaisons in it. So maybe we could at that stage just shuck and jive and agree on what changes we should make to it. But by all means, Sarah, I've got no problem with you proposing an alternative.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, I think years ago, and Gordon brought it up last year too, is like trying to get a sense of when these meetings are so that we don't stack it day after day after day or have conflicts. And so that's a really good point, Sarah. Yeah. Because I had the same thing last year with capital warrant in schools. So it is hard when it's 3 nights in a row and other committees are meeting at different times.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great thing to try and balance.
Yeah. Okay. So perhaps we can move straight on to that budget guidance review. Woody, I'm wondering if you could possibly post that up on the screen so we can sort of go through it and see it at the same time. Thank you very much. In this financial overview and budget considerations, I did make a few rather minor changes after other people had reviewed it, putting commas in places and removing and changing subwords or completing some words that were incomplete. But there's nothing really of substance that has changed in this if you haven't had a chance to review this before the meeting. So I would say those first 3 pages are pretty much as they were last week without any real changes.
Yeah, can I ask one question? And I don't even know if we sent a letter last year, did we? Because I feel like we kind of got a late start. But my one question is, since we're asking for budgets relative to actuals as opposed to, historic, or is that different? I've always thought, I know we always have asked for level service, but where people have kind of sent in a budget based on whatever their budget was for the prior year. And if they had a lot of turnbacks, they had a lot of turnbacks. But it sounds like we're asking them to budget to actuals now, which to me would be I think it just changed, but it could be wrong with that.
I think the language has been there in the past, but you're absolutely right that that's not how it's typically done. And I think that's why we try and put that in there, to get them to kind of think a little bit differently versus on flat year on year. But I don't think it's new language. I think this was the version from the year before last, but we could probably do more to reinforce it.
Yeah, I agree with that, Melissa.
But I tend to think people are going to just budget at level service to last year, even if their actuals were lower or higher. Well, if they're higher, they'll probably seek more, but if they were lower, they would probably just take the spare room.
Well, and I think this will be a year too, but not commenting too much on this, but I think where we did see like a lot of roles were vacant last year. And so we are going to see where they came in under budget, but it wasn't due to lack of need. It was due to lack of hiring. So I absolutely think we're going to see probably even bigger deltas than usual on requested budget to actual for that reason.
Yeah, I think that's probably right too, Melissa. Woody, I wonder, this is an older version of that document. I wonder if you would be so kind as to put up the one that I sent out in the email before the meeting, the reminder email. You know the one I was referring to, Woody? You're on mute, so I can't hear you if you're talking.
Yeah, sorry.
So this is not the right version.
Is it draft 2? Is that?
It's the one that I sent in the email at about 3:30 this afternoon.
Yeah, I thought that was this one.
Ah, that's that one. Yeah. Oh, that's right. You've got it now. You were showing the older version with
I had the older one a minute ago, but
yeah. Okay, great. Thank you very much.
The current one.
Excellent. So I guess we can go down to page 4 now, Woody. So these were the dates that I passed through Michael and Carl in the administration. This might be a little bit ambitious. Michael was hoping we could have the budget due by December 4th, but he wasn't absolutely sure, and he wanted to consult with Carl on that before committing. So we may well have to push it back a week. But this is I've reworked those dates, as you can see, fairly significantly, starting in early December now, and then moving as quickly as we can right through the process. And I've split up the organization of the meetings to try and get a balance between larger budgets, ones that we know are usually complex and we have to have much more detail to contend with, and mixing those with smaller budget groups so that we don't get overwhelmed by several large budgets all at once. So this is the changed dates that I've proposed. Do people feel strongly about that? Are there any suggested changes that we should make?
Cam, if people come in with a budget that's flat, are we expecting them to come in anyway? Didn't we talk last year about maybe just if they, if it could be a big budget, but if it's like identical to last year and there's nothing to talk about, like, is there a point of having them come in?
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. I think that's in reality the case. The trouble is, up front, we don't know exactly who, what departments that is. So we have to sort of have planned for a timeline, talking to them all. In the end, it doesn't necessarily mean we will invite everybody in to talk, but we may need to. And I just wanted to have them on the schedule so that we knew what we were dealing with. Does anybody else feel that that's overkill?
I agree with Steve. I think, or I mean, with you that let's schedule everybody, but once the paperwork comes in, if there's nothing that we need to question, we can tell them, okay, there's no need to come in.
Yeah.
Can February 21st, that's the school vacation week we talked about last week, right?
Oh, right. So that probably makes no sense for us to have that budget review then, right? So maybe we should remove that, because I'm assuming that several members won't be available that week. I, of course, having children out of schools for quite a few years, I didn't really think about that. I was thinking, okay, I'm going to schedule the schools so they're not in that week, but then I didn't really think about our own members, so I apologize for that.
We present to ourselves on December 13th. I see the warrant committee listed. I don't know.
Yeah, it is a sort of an irony, but it's a reality. It's also a budget that we have to review.
We have a budget?
We do have a budget.
Oh.
We cover the Blue Book and all those parties that we have every other week, Janet. It's not a very large budget, but there's an element there.
Sorry, Cam, did I just hear you invite us to dinner again?
Maybe sometimes, Sarah. Maybe to celebrate my departure, but probably you prefer to hold that after I left.
So is the Blue Book being sent in mail to every resident? Is that a requirement, municipal requirement? And people cannot opt out and choose to get it through email or something?
Peter,
Not to the best of my knowledge.
we also have to, it would involve extra work to create a format that was readable via email or on the website as well. It's something that we've considered doing. It's probably an ambition we should have to move this online, if only to save a few trees. But the process probably will take a little bit of time to change. I don't know, Peter, what are your thoughts on this? Should we try and just bring it all online ultimately? I'm not suggesting that for this year, but
statutory requirements aside, I think it would be much more flexible. We wouldn't have all the time spent running drafts back and forth to the printer and waiting to read proofs and whatnot. We could produce the entire thing in-house. We could have much more detailed graphics. We could have drill down. But if a printed Blue Book is required, then print first has to be our goal.
right.
And to derive a website which is significantly different from that would be a challenge.
Right, and it
but,
probably
pulling some of the graphics out of the Blue Book and putting them online, I think is a laudable goal, and I'm going to see what I can do this year.
Okay, that sounds
a large number of town meeting attendees show up with their copy of the Blue Book.
right.
But I think that's probably the minority that's very vocal too, right? I think since it does take a while to change people's behavior, maybe Warrant Committee should have a budget to run parallel paper copy and electronic version, and to at some point, if the statutory requirement allows us for people to opt out of paper delivery.
Mm-hmm. Bob, do you have any insight into that, of what our obligations might be to just publish it in paper and or on the web?
Peter, I wouldn't know.
No, I was asking Bob.
I would check with the town administrator.
Okay, I can do that too. Yeah.
The other thing you guys need to know is the way we've laid out the communication strategy. That was Kate O'Brien's responsibility. And as you know, she left a year ago.
Yeah.
So we're in the process of finalizing a hire.
Okay. So that might be worth us taking up again a little bit later to find out what we can do there to post stuff on the web as well. Clearly, it involves quite a lot of work to reformat that all, and we would need some help from the town anyway to accomplish that.
Or initially, even just scan copy to be distributed to people who don't necessarily want the paper mail delivery. And just finding out whether is it allowed to actually post something like that on Dover Facebook, for example.
Mhm.
Yeah, you gotta be, yes, we have a communication policy that we developed 2 or 3 years ago. And it talks about various social media do's and don'ts. So that also will sit under the ATA as we do document management, as we do publishing content and management. So, having nobody to do stuff isn't a big help.
Right. Right. It's a big challenge. I agree, Bob.
And the other side of that coin is we have our policy is to stop sending paper.
Yep.
And so we want to move to a digitized distribution. And then you guys ask the question, are we allowed? Who the hell knows?
Yeah. We'll have to do a drill down on that to find out what.
Yeah,
what
so
our-
I mean, we have Mike and we have Cam, and probably together they have 500 years of experience. So I really think, from again, listening to this, the key people for a lot of this stuff, the town administrator on one side and Dawn Fattori on the other side with the regional school committee and with the board of selectmen. That's got to
Mhm.
cover 80% of the budget.
Mhm. Yep.
Okay, I'm off.
Thank you, Bob. Any other comments on this timeline? Clearly, it's quite a deal further front-loaded than it was before, and it will mean that we will have a full set of meetings beginning December 4th on a regular weekly basis. But if there are any comments, please let me know. I need to get a validation of this document from Michael to be sure that we're consistent with the budgeting plans of the town administration. And once we've got that, perhaps at our next meeting we'll just approve this and send it out. It needs to really go out fairly soon now. Because people need to have that guidance as they prepare their budgets. Okay, could we move on a little bit further? That's clear. I don't think none of that has changed, but it may after we've spoken to Michael. And now we're back to the liaison question. So, Sarah, could you tell us which department or commission or board you don't want to be the liaison for, and then we will see if we can sort of negotiate substitutes of equivalent loads of work. You're on mute, Sarah. Oh,
Can
thank
I
you.
bother you to pause on the second page? No.
So we've got Parks and Rec there, yeah, with Steve as a secondary for you. That's the only one for you. Oh no, there's another one there I see as well. The regional school, of course.
Regional school committee agenda on the 14th was 42 pages long. So I want to be transparent in sharing that, not to sound like a squeaky wheel, but to strongly urge whoever might be considering potentially taking my spot to know that the commitment is not modest.
So you would like to get off the school, regional
Well,
school?
I asked to be added to Parks and Rec, and I know Steve has endeavored many more hours in the last several seasons, given the precept to the Carol decisions. So I feel like in good faith, I should remain there, and I would like to remain there, as I think this is a strong year of moving forward with that area. But I do see there being a conflict with my just personal time management with remaining on DSC.
Okay.
I'm sorry to have to say that, because I mean,
No, that's okay.
I have 4 kids that occupy space in the schools, which I like being involved, and I like interfacing with.
So Janet, is that could potentially, if you were to move into that, could we do it that Janet, you took the main role there, and that Sarah became the secondary? Would that work for both of you?
The only thing is that I got Board of Health, which just takes up a lot of time. And I was gonna actually talk to Janet Greenwood about doing the communication piece.
Yeah, fair enough. No, I see that. Does anybody else feel that they would be interested in the school committee?
You know, I'll just keep it for now, Cam. And if a lot of conflicts arise throughout where I'm not going to make it Zoom or in person, I do like to make these meetings in person. I think it's important to have that that public transparency with a member of our committee there to support and to, you know, to liaise. I think it's a important share. So if I think I'm going to be missing too many of them, or I can't make them, I'll let you know, and I'll see if maybe someone else might be willing to take a one-off meeting once here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in that spirit,
I mean, you have me as a backup, right?
Right. I know, Gianna, I hate to ask you to always be consistently my go-to, because you're always in a meeting, always. And you have a lot more other committee responsibilities. So, you know what, I'll just stay with it for now. And if it becomes an issue, I'll let
it's a substantial portion of our budget. You know, it's about, the schools constitute about 50% of the budget of the town. So it is a fairly important one that we shouldn't treat in the breach as something else we need to do. So if it becomes a challenge, Sarah, I'm sure let's talk about it some more, and we'll try and work out how we can cover that without,
all right. Thank you so
overburdening you.
Thank you, Cam.
Thank you very much. Has anybody else got any concerns about their assignments here? Jerry, you're appearing in quite a lot, but most of those I think will be really fairly small. They're relatively small budgets, perhaps with the exception. I think probably they're all relatively small, and ones in which you probably will not have a lot of work to do. So I think that's a reasonable allocation, even though it looks like a lot.
I'm fine with it. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Cam, can I trouble you to just scroll back a few pages? I want to take a look at the last month of the schedule of the calendar before you, I know you said you have to share. All right, so we end May 6th. Okay, that's all. Thank you so much.
That's the town meeting in May 6th. Yep. And then that's the end of our year as a warrant committee. So I will remove that February 21st line. It just doesn't make sense to hold a meeting then anyway, but the other ones I'll keep.
Cam, one more question. So I'm assuming that you already kind of made these assignments based on the fact that some of the departments all have the same person on the other side. But I don't know for sure.
Yeah,
so it would be actually...
unfortunately, I don't know for sure either, Janet.
Because that's another reason I was thinking.
Work out with Felicia.
Yeah.
I will reach out to her this week and see if she can give me a complete list of the contacts that would go with this, and maybe we should make that as part of this document going forward if we can. So
Because it'll be easier if we just have one person on the other end for a whole bunch of departments, right?
Exactly. I agree with you entirely. I'll see what we can do there, Janet.
Okay.
Any other concerns about this document? Now, I'm in a bit of a bind because I don't particularly want to push this. Well, I guess we can live for another week with it in a draft format, particularly since the town hasn't really got back to me on when the final date will be for budgets due by these the various departments and boards. So we'll push it off a final decision on this until the next meeting. I don't think there'll be any substantive changes. It might be more in that timeline section that the changes will be. But I would appreciate it if you would give it another read during this coming week and just check out what the advice is that we're giving. I wrote this up simply because it was a time saver. I had to get something out there that we could talk to. And I'm all ears on any suggestions for changes that you might have for it. I don't feel proprietary ownership of this, and I won't be offended if you have a different approach, even in that the wording in the section at the beginning where we're giving the general guidance. Okay, well, thanks for looking at that.
I'm sorry, I just have one super quick question.
Yep.
As I'm still happy to be liaise for protective agency and police, I wondered is the recent public posting and announcement of Chief McGowan's retirement, I think it was 2 days ago, is that commensurate with his last day, and or shall I still aim to reach out to him as I have in previous years? Or
a new police chief is, I think, about to be appointed. And as soon as we know that, Sarah, I'll make sure you know who that is.
well, I guess if I'd been doing my job as liaison, I would know this.
No, that's okay. Because I'm talking with the town a lot more, I get that information in the air, and I don't sort of I didn't think to let you know that. But in any case, I'm informed that Chief McGowan has come up with a draft budget for next year already. So
Okay.
it might be well worthwhile talking to him before he leaves.
I'll reach out to him and
get
get
his,
that
his input on
get
it.
that information before he disappears.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Thank you again.
Thank you. That was a good question.
Thank you. I know.
Woody, you can probably remove this document now. I think we've pretty well beaten it to death. We're now really down to other business. Is there any other business that we need to address? I don't have any.
Just as a liaison report for our information, the fire department may come back to the town for more money for the fire engine. The engine one replacement that was approved at last town meeting, the price on that was contingent on their ordering it with a smaller engine and transmission, since we don't have to go long distances, and it was felt that the smaller of the two engine options would be sufficient. Unfortunately, the manufacturer of the engine is discontinuing that option, and by the time we come to the head of the build pipeline, we're told there's a 50-50 chance that we will have to upgrade to the bigger engine and its transmission, and that'll be another $200,000. Not nice.
No.
Now this we probably won't know until next spring or summer whether this will happen, because the build pipeline is like 18 months. But
So we might know we might be able to include that in this year's budget then.
Well, it wouldn't be in this year's budget. We don't have to pay for the truck until it is delivered.
Okay.
So it would be in the 26 budget.
Okay, fair enough. So we don't even need to worry too much about that right now, but it's an important element of particularly of the rising capital budget that we're anticipating for this year. Yeah. Okay. And are there any other liaison announcements that anybody has yet? I'm not expecting any, but in case somebody is pregnant with speech, I'd be happy to hear it. Hearing no response. I guess we're at the end of the meeting. Do I hear a motion?
So move.
By general acclamation.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. I guess I declare this meeting closed.
Great.
Take a
Thank
vote.
you.
Bye now.
You, Cam. Good night.
Good night.